Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Kicker, a podcast by the Forsyth County Democrats. Today, we're breaking down information on the state election board. They're holding a special meeting here in Forsyth County on June 3rd and 4th at Lanier Technical College. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss Governor Kemp calling lawmakers back for a special session to discuss elections and redistricting. And of course, we're going to discuss the primary results. I'm Jessica Fleming.
And I'm TJ Chapley.
It's so nice to have you here today, TJ.
Jessica, I've been behind the scenes mostly, so it's good to be in front of the camera for one. I'm the second vice chair of the Forsyth County Democrats, and I've been working with Becky and Jessica to produce this podcast. So it's really good to be here, and I'm glad to talk to you.
Yeah, no, it was your idea to have the podcast, and you helped get it off the ground and keep us on schedule and doing all that producing. So it's fun to talk to you in front of everybody this time.
Yeah, there's a little bit of not debate, but Becky and I can't remember whose idea it was, but we'll both take credit. We're both taking credit for it because we're enjoying this a lot.
Well, let's get started. The primary results is something that we definitely want to talk about. So the primary just happened recently. And for those that don't know, the primary is when Democrats and also Republicans decide who they want to represent them in the November election. So the primary just occurred. It was very exciting as a Democrat in our county because for many years, sometimes we'd have nobody running for a position or we would have just one person. And we had a lot of races that we had a choice as a Democrat of who to select. And some of these races we'll talk about, some of them are going to a runoff because you have to get in Georgia 50% of the vote in order to be the outright winner. So we do have some outright winners, but we also have some runoffs. So elections are not done. You're going to have to mark your calendar because we will want to vote again in the runoff elections in June.
Yeah, and the runoffs are starting, the early voting for the runoffs are June 18th through June 12th, and then the election day is actually June 16th. And I'm kind of new to this whole thing, right? I haven't been like active as much as you and Becky have, and so getting to experience this rush of lots of candidates, something that I've been told that we haven't really seen, and I've been voting, but I never really understood just how little our down ballot candidates were. So being a part of this flurry of helping candidates, and we have multiple runoffs, it's just been exciting.
Yeah. So let's go through a few of them. So we had Senate District 48 on the podcast. We interviewed both candidates. We do want to thank all of the candidates that ran because, like I said, it's so great to have a choice. Putting your name on a ballot is something that I think takes a lot of bravery, hard work. They all worked really hard. So we're so thankful for all of them. But in SD 48, we had Laura Mervardian and Nathan Hombrecht, who were two great candidates. Laura won that race. She won outright. So there's no runoff. She will be our candidate for the SD 48 race in November. And she's up against our incumbent in that seat, which is Sean Still.
Yeah. And, you guys talked at length, I think, about Sean Still. So we're excited that we have a shot here. A lot of the legislator here knows that this is we had a really good shot to win this. And I think Laura is going to do a good job. We had a great time working with both of them. And now we know who we can get behind fully for November, which is exciting.
Yeah. This was one of the races. Yeah. Like we said, this is a very flippable district. It was super close last cycle. So we are excited about this. Another race that is also one of our best shots of winning is House District 25. Again, two great candidates. We had Elaine Padgett and Metin Vargonen, and Elaine won that race outright. So she will be our candidate going into the November race. This will be a repeat because our House representative is Todd Jones, and Elaine went up against Todd Jones in the last cycle in 2024. So we have a rematch now. And this particular race is one that Republicans, if you talk to any Republicans in the know, they kind of think this is one that could be the first to fall. to go to a Democrat. So it's something, it's exciting that we know who our candidate is going to be in this race.
Yeah. Again, we worked with both of them on the committee, and being able to help both of them was fun. Metin, just like Nathan, were new to this, but they both did an excellent job. Laura and Elaine had a little more experience in the political sphere, but you know, we supported them all equally, and we tried to help them
Yeah.
get across the finish line. So we were prepared for helping whoever came out of it, and we're happy to have Laura and Elaine as our candidates.
Yep. Yeah. And then the other race, Congressional District 7. So that one we had 4 candidates. And again, 4 great candidates. There was a debate that was here in Forsyth County. And this is for Rich McCormick's seat. So this is one I know many of us really want a strong candidate.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a primary because of these 4 candidates, now we're down to 2. So those 2 going into a runoff are Tony Kozycki and Case Norton. Neither one of them got more than 50%. So in June, like you said, June 8th through 12th, early voting, and then June 16th is the election day. If you have strong opinions, or you should educate yourself about these 2 people, so that we want a strong candidate. And I think they're both fabulous, but we want a really strong candidate to go up against Rich McCormick because one of the candidates, I think they both agreed he's a Trump yes man. And
Yes.
they talked about that at the recent general election for the Democrats. And I know we want someone who really cares about the people in our district, in Congressional District 7. This is for to being in the United States Congress. So really important seat.
Yeah, and for those that don't have any familiarity with Tony and Case, we're working on a debate for them. Those dates are still to be determined, but as always, if you look at our show notes that we keep up to date, or you go to the website, you'll be able to see when that debate comes out, and that'll be a really good opportunity to understand better who you're voting for in the general or in the runoff election, and then going into the general.
Yeah. So in general, that was the exciting part was seeing some of these primary results. Another super exciting thing was that statewide, more people grabbed a Democratic ballot than a Republican ballot. So that was super exciting to see that Democrats are really energized, that they're voting in the primaries. So the percentage, we looked it up, it was 56% people grabbed a Democratic ballot to 41% of Republicans, and this was statewide. And so TJ, I thought like, yay, our judicial candidates are going to win because so many more Democrats turned out than Republicans. But that was our bit of sad news from election night. I know we've talked about this on the podcast before. Jen Jordan and Miracle Rankin were running for Georgia Supreme Court. That is a nonpartisan race. So there wasn't going to be a D or R next to their names, but they had Democratic values. And we also had some like Court of Appeals races where we had these Democrat candidates running, and they didn't win. So that was the disappointment for the night.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. I felt going into this, Jessica, that we would be having a blue wave, but we learned through this, and I think we've known this a little bit, that getting the vote, that's like our job, right? My job is to help get the vote out and educate voters. And when we see the results and we see that Jen Jordan and Miracle Rankin didn't win, that just sort of highlights that lack of education and how hard it is to reach the people and let them know what's going on. When I used to vote, when I used to vote before I joined the committee, right? I didn't know everything, and now I know going into that like Becky said last time, just print your ballot out, do a little bit of research up front. I printed my ballot out for my wife, and she immediately jumped in and was like trying to find out who she wanted to vote for, and just get a little bit educated. But if you go to the ballot not with no preparation, you're going to see a bunch of names you're not familiar with, and in these nonpartisan races, it makes it much more difficult for you to make an informed decision. And in this case, people didn't vote for the Democrat because there was no D by it. And that makes sense because it's a judge, right? We want them to be nonpartisan, but the point is educate yourself so you know who aligns with your values.
Yeah. One big thing, we should be patting ourselves on the back, though, in
Yes.
Forsyth County, because so Jennifer Ambler, who is running for House District 100 and is the secretary of the Democrats, she is very good with stats, and she did a little analysis. And of the Democrats, of the people in Forsyth County who grabbed a Democratic ballot and voted, they did overwhelmingly vote for Jen Jordan and Miracle Rankin. And that means we did a good job. We were getting the word out. Forsythians, the Democratic Forsythians, when they went to vote, they knew the assignment and they did it. So I think that is something that we should be proud of, and that we need to build on that as we go forward with the rest of the elections.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. That's just seeing that side by side was really good, and they even beat Ossoff, right? Which is a
Yeah,
big deal because he's kind of the star of the Democratic Party, especially in Georgia,
yeah,
right? But seeing the numbers and seeing that we accomplished our goal, at least for getting our word out there, makes you feel really
yeah,
good and makes you hungry to get into these runoffs and get into these generals and help where we can.
yeah. And that kind of reminds us, like we've been talking about, we want to grow the podcast and stuff. And
Yeah,
that's the reason that we started the podcast, was because we want to
exactly.
educate people about vote about these things that you might not know. Like, we're both on the Democratic committee in Forsyth County, so there's a lot of insider stuff, and we want to make sure everybody knows like who they're supposed to vote for, any of this stuff that's going on that we're talking about all the time. So please definitely continue to listen or share, or text when you get information like this about voting for the judges. Like, do text a friend or print out the ballot for a friend or your spouse or something, so that we can like spread the word about it.
Just get the word out. That's the main thing. It doesn't have to come from us. You can share your opinions to your friends and, just get people voting and understanding what they're voting for.
Yeah, it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
And people, it's very confusing. This was a long ballot, so it's nice to talk to someone who knows a little bit. So if you are one of those people, feel free to
Yeah.
share and tell your friends.
Yeah.
One last point I wanted to make about voter education is that Governor Kemp recently signed a bunch of bills that were passed this past legislative session. One of them was HB 369, and that was very controversial because it would make certain races, certain local races in 5 Democratic strongholds near Atlanta, nonpartisan. So that means they would be like the judicial races where there's no D or R next to their names. Of course, this wasn't statewide. If it was statewide, I think a lot of us would say, great, okay, make local races
Yeah.
nonpartisan. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was only 5 that always go blue. And the reason that is very upsetting and disappointing is because, as we've seen from the judicial races, if people in these places where they tend to lean blue are going to go and they're going to vote for their county commissioner or some local races, there's no D or R, they're not going to know and they're going to be confused. And now these Democratic candidates in those places are going to have to spend more money. They're going to have to spend more time educating voters when it may have been an easy win for them. So this just shows how they're trying to undermine any growth by Democrats. And it was a bit of a dirty move. People were hoping Governor Kemp wouldn't sign it, but unfortunately he did.
Yeah, and this is one of those things like you hinted at, which is it's a common sense thing, right? For these local races, these judicial races, you don't want to have partisan politics come into play, but you when you do it only in a specific area, you're basically telling the public that you're attacking them. And when people throw out these common sense values, it's a common sense value to want to be equal to everybody. But when you do it in such a politically negative way, this is the type of thing that we're against strongly, and we want to push against, educate people on, is saying like, listen, on the face of it, yeah, take the D off, take the R off. But when you really dig in and you understand how they're doing it, it's not in a good faith way. It's in a very, very bad faith way.
Yeah. And that's even why the judicial races were actually on the primary ballot, in hopes that, the primary ballot, a lot of times people don't necessarily always turn out. Whereas if it's in November, that's when there's more turnout. So there are so many ways that Republicans are undermining elections and letting people pick and choose who they want. We'll get
Yeah.
to more of that in a little bit
Yeah.
when we talk about redistricting, but we'll
Yes.
talk about the state election board. They are going to be here in Forsyth County. So the state election board is for the entire state of Georgia. Normally their meetings seem to be closer to Atlanta, but they're going to be in Forsyth County at Lanier Technical College on June 3rd and 4th. and they will be talking about, running elections, the upcoming elections. They will be talking about, there will be people who are bringing up like disputes about elections. There is going to be a public comment portion. And it's exciting that it's going to be here in Forsyth County because so many of us might want to attend these state election board meetings, but they're usually closer to Atlanta. It's more travel. So if you're able to attend, we really encourage you to attend. You don't have to stay for the entire time. I've heard these meetings can go on for 12 hours. So you can just make an appearance from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. is kind of the main portion where there's going to be public comment if you want to make a comment. We've been encouraged to wear blue if you're a Democrat. So definitely consider stopping by.
And I've never been to any election board meeting. I know we have a few people on our committee that are on the that help on the election board and are part of the election board. But have you been to any, like even the local election board stuff? And if so, how did that work?
Yeah, so I went to the meeting, the Forsyth County election board meeting. I went to one, and it was when Debbie Stair was inducted onto being a state election board member. So the way that works is there's 5 members, I believe. 2 are chosen by the Republican Party, 2 chosen by the Democratic Party, and 1 is nonpartisan. So when we selected Debbie, I went to that meeting to see her get sworn in. And yeah, you see in the beginning that there's public comment. There are people that are going up and talking about elections being fraudulent or bringing up the names of people they think should no longer be able to vote. And it was just very surprising to see, for me to see that there's these private citizens who are like trying to find people that they can remove from voter rolls and present their name publicly.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to see that. I heard also that at a recent meeting, people were wearing shirts that said paper ballots now, that they want to get rid of all electronics and go back to paper. So I'm sure it will be an eventful meeting. And I think in Forsyth County, we do have a history where there's a large amount of voter challenges. I think one of the most in the state, if not the most. And it kind of lines up when you hear people talk about it. It's like the percentage was like around 30%, which is also around the percentage of Democrats, which is very interesting. So it's a really good opportunity for us to make our voice heard when it's so close to us and not very far to travel. And you can just pop in for a little while.
Yeah, and this is really indicative of like what we say is, we're the front line of the Georgia battleground, right? And so there's a reason why a lot of these big movements happen in our county, and going to events like these is a really, really easy way to just be involved, even marginally, and anything is important. Anything like that is important. So I won't be able to make it. I'll be out of town, but I know a lot of us will be able to make it, and it's going to be great to hear what happens there.
Yeah, I do agree. Sometimes just being an extra person, an extra witness, or an extra body there to express support or frustration is a good thing. So definitely consider attending. And then the other thing that aligns with talking about ballots and everything is that Governor Kemp recently called back lawmakers for a special session. It's going to be June 17th. They're going to discuss 2 things. One of them has to do with elections. So as we've talked about on the podcast before, there was a bill that was passed in 2024 that would, it had to do with the QR codes and possibly eliminating QR codes. However, the machines that we use QR codes, and we have an election coming up. So there isn't really a legal way to do the elections unless we need to find a solution. And the state house and state senate wrapped up their session earlier this year without coming forward with an actual solution to this problem. So we've been wondering if Governor Kemp was going to call them back so that he could solve this. I think this will also be a big portion of what's discussed during the meeting, the state election board meeting. But Governor Kemp did finally call lawmakers back so that they can discuss this election issue.
I'm hoping something good comes out of this, Jessica. Right? It needs to be done, and like you said, July 1st. I think July 1st is when this kicks in. So if they don't have an answer by this special session, like, what are we going to do in November? We don't really know.
I feel bad for the people that, in Forsyth County and across the state, we have all these election workers, people who actually that's their full-time job is like running elections. And they are these hardworking people. They have no plan. And it's like they are looking to the government to give them the plan so they can prepare, they can train volunteers. And it's a huge operation. And instead it's causing all this uncertainty for all of them. And they need to really mobilize and get ready for this.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though, that we were wondering for a few months, is Governor Kemp going to call them back? What's going to happen? Is he going to call them back? And then he very curiously decides to call them back shortly after the Supreme Court weakened significantly the Voting Rights Act. And when they did that, a bunch of states are scrambling to redistrict and redraw maps because now with the Voting Rights Act being weakened, they have that ability. And it was interesting that all of a sudden Governor Kemp's like, okay, let's solve this election issue and also discuss redistricting. So this is going to be on June 17th. And this is something we'll really want to be loud about and mobilize around. So maybe we should back up and basically say that when the Voting Rights Act was weakened, that would give state lawmakers the ability to redraw maps. And usually these are redrawn like every 10 years. I know it's very confusing now because all these states have been wanting to redistrict ever since President Trump asked Republicans to start redistricting when they're not supposed to do it. You're supposed to do it every 10 years. So this has been in the news a lot, but now with the weakening of the Voting Rights Act, it's, even on a very local level, places that weren't going to do anything are now interested in using this as an opportunity to redistrict.
I think this is a bad look for just the United States in general. Gerrymandering is just a bad practice. And when it came to the Voting Rights Act, the common complaint is that it's sort of like DEI. Like from the Republican side, the common complaint is it's sort of like a DEI thing, which is totally misguided, right? Like these laws were made to support people who didn't have the access they needed, right? So when you finally have the Supreme Court say, oh, we don't need to have these certain portions of the Voting Rights Act continue, and then they go and redistrict away all of the Black majority locations, right? All the districts that, like in Louisiana, where they basically just wiped them out clean.
I think we should remind people, too, there was a time in the United States Congress where the Democrats were poised to push eliminating gerrymandering, and unfortunately now the Republicans would get behind it. The fact that Governor Kemp, I think, is calling people back and they're going to be debating this, it seems like a foregone conclusion, like, okay, they're going to redraw the lines. What are we going to do? However, it seems like there are some southern states who have not automatically redistricted. So that's good news, and that means we need to be doing stuff. We'll put in the show notes and on our social media on the website, like what we should be doing. We should be calling our state senators and calling our House representatives. There might be some events that I think they're still to be determined, but there will be opportunities to protest. And we need to be really loud that this is not acceptable to redistrict just because of this, and that we need to be waiting for the appropriate times for redistricting.
Exactly. And I'm excited to see the turnout. I think it'll be, 56 to 41, just pulling paper ballots, right? So I'm excited to see the number of people that come out and scream about this and make their presence known. I mean, we'll see what comes. A lot's happening in the next few weeks, so a lot more to come, and we'll have some updates as soon as we get them too.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered everything. There was a lot to cover this time. No,
I thank you for having me on. I'm glad I could cover for Becky, but you and Becky do a great job. And if I ever get the opportunity to be on again, I'll happily accept it, but I'm going to go back to being behind the camera, Jessica.
It was fun to talk to you. And we will put all these details in the show notes. So if there's anything that you're curious about, and then follow us on social media, the Forsyth County Democrats, and on our webpage, because we'll put all these important events and information. We have a newsletter too, where you can stay up to date on all the different things that we're talking about.
Yeah. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening.